What would you do if your parents left you for 11 years and then suddenly showed up at a funeral just to claim $80 million? I still remember that night like it just happened. It was the night my whole world changed. I was only 9 years old, sitting in the back seat of an old car, holding my favorite teddy bear close to my chest. I never went anywhere without it. The sky was dark, but it felt calm. The streetlights gave off a soft orange glow. I wasn't scared because we were going to Grandma Brenda's house, and being there always made me feel better. Grandma would welcome me with a big smile. Her cookies smelled amazing. Her hugs were warm. She told me magical stories and let me look through her special old books, books that only I was allowed to touch. But that night felt strange. The car stopped in front of her house. I heard the gravel under the tires. I waited for my mom to look back at me, but she didn't. She just sat there, gripping the steering wheel like she was afraid to let go. Her face wasn't angry or sad, it was just blank. I didn't understand what it meant. My dad didn't say a word. He just stared ahead. Maybe it hurt him to look at me. Finally, my mom turned around. She spoke so quietly, I almost didn't hear her. We just need a little time to figure things out, Christina. Be a good girl and stay with Grandma for now, okay? That was all she said. No hugs. No kisses. No promises. I nodded like a good girl. I didn't think anything was wrong. I thought they'd come back the next day or the day after that. I got out of the car with my small backpack. It only had a few clothes inside. Grandma Brenda was already at the door, waiting. Her eyes looked sad, but she still smiled at me. I turned around and called out, "Mom?" But the car had already started to drive away. No wave. No goodbye. I ran a few steps after the car, my chest tight, watching the red taillights disappear down the road. I didn't cry, not because I was strong, but because I didn't understand yet that they had left me. Grandma hugged me tight and rubbed my back, just like she always did when she wanted me to feel better. She didn't say anything. She just led me inside, where the smell of chamomile tea filled the house. She made my favorite chicken noodle soup, but I couldn't eat any of it. That night, she read me the same bedtime story I always loved, the one I asked for all the time. Her voice was calm and gentle, but when the lights went out, I couldn't focus on the words. I curled up in bed, holding my teddy bear close, listening carefully for the sound of a car. But all I heard was the wind outside. The next day, I sat by the window, staring at the road. I stayed there all day, waiting. Nobody came. A week went by. Every afternoon, I sat there, watching every car that passed. Every engine sound made my heart jump, but then it would sink again when it wasn't them. 3 months later, and still, my parents didn't come back. At school, when other kids talked about their families, I just smiled and stayed quiet. I stopped asking Grandma Brenda when they were coming, because deep down I already knew they weren't. My head understood it, but my heart didn't. At night, when the house was quiet, I would hide under the covers, trying not to let my soft crying be heard. I didn't want Grandma to worry. Still, some nights she would come into my room quietly and sit at the end of my bed, gently rubbing my back with her wrinkled hand. "It's not your fault, Emma," she would whisper. "Some people just aren't ready to be parents. But that doesn't mean you did anything wrong." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But that question kept coming back again and again in my mind. Why didn't they choose me? Grandma Brenda wasn't the kind of person who showed big emotions. She didn't say "I love you" all the time, but she showed it in small, quiet ways. Through her kindness, through warm meals ready on the table, through lessons she taught me without even saying much, and most of all, through the silence she kept about the ones who left. Her house wasn't fancy. It didn't look like the big shiny homes in magazines, but it always felt safe. She drove an old Toyota that rattled a bit, but she never cared about getting a new one. Her shelves were full of books that reached the ceiling, stories and biographies she loved. Every morning, she read the financial news in the paper, sometimes nodding, sometimes frowning in thought. I didn't understand the numbers she looked at, but every time she looked up and saw me, there was pride in her eyes. "Why do you read that stuff?" I asked Grandma one quiet morning while I stirred my cereal. She put down her cup of tea and gave a small smile. Because knowledge is power, Emma. And when you learn how to handle money, you won't have to depend on anyone else. I just nodded. I didn't fully understand it back then, but those words would stick with me forever. Living with Grandma Brenda, I slowly got used to my new life. I stopped watching out the window, waiting for a car that would never come. She taught me how to bake cookies, take care of the little flower garden in the backyard, and how to think clearly instead of letting my feelings control me. Most of all, she made sure I always felt loved. She was the first to notice how much I loved science. One afternoon, when I was 9, she found me in the kitchen, completely focused. I had mixed baking soda and vinegar and was watching with wide eyes as bubbles spilled over the cup. She folded her arms and smiled. Well, looks like we've got a scientist in the house. I looked up, feeling a little shy. I was just trying something, I said. She nodded. Trying things is how you learn, Emma. But if you want to do more, let's do it the right way. The next day, she took me to a bookstore that sold science books for kids and told me to choose whatever I liked. I picked a book about chemical reactions and a small experiment kit. She never said no. Even when I asked for more books later, she always supported me. She made me believe nothing was out of reach. By the time I was 14, I was working on a project to study how bacteria reacted to different things. I spent hours reading, testing, and writing notes. When the state science fair came, I was scared to go. I thought I'd fail, but Grandma wouldn't let me give up. Emma, she said, being successful doesn't mean never failing. It means you keep going, even when it's hard. Her words gave me strength. I didn't just go to the fair, I won first place. When I stepped on the stage to get my trophy, I looked for her in the crowd. She was in the back row, eyes full of pride. In that moment, I knew every late night, every tear, every bit of work was worth it. When other kids talked about their families, I just smiled and stayed quiet. I had stopped asking Grandma when my parents were coming back because I already knew. They weren't. My mind understood that, but my heart still hurt. Most nights, after everything was quiet, I would crawl under my blanket and cry softly so Grandma wouldn't hear. I didn't want her to worry. I didn't want Grandma to worry about me. But sometimes, she would quietly come into my room at night. She'd sit at the edge of my bed and gently rub my back in slow circles with her old, soft hand. "It's not your fault, Emma," she would whisper. "Some people just aren't meant to be parents. But that has nothing to do with you." I really wanted to believe her. Did I believe her? I tried. But it was hard, because the truth always came back. And the same question kept echoing in my mind. Why didn't they want me? Grandma Brenda wasn't someone who gave big hugs or said a lot of emotional things. But she showed her love in quiet ways. With patience. With warm meals always ready on the table. With small lessons that stayed with me. And by never saying anything bad about the people who left. Her house wasn't fancy. Nothing like the ones I saw in magazines. But it always felt safe. She drove an old Toyota that made noise. But she didn't care about buying a new one. Her bookshelves were tall and full of novels and life stories she loved to read. Every morning, she sat with the newspaper and read the finance section. Sometimes she nodded, sometimes she frowned, thinking hard. I didn't understand any of the numbers. But every time she looked up and met my eyes, I saw pride on her face. One slow morning while I was eating cereal, I asked, "Why do you read that stuff?" She put down her tea and gave me a soft smile. "Because knowledge is power, Emma," she said. "And if you know how to handle money, you'll never have to depend on anyone else." I just nodded back then. I didn't know how important her words would become later in my life. Living with Grandma Brenda, I slowly found a new rhythm. I stopped sitting by the window, hoping some car I didn't recognize would pull up. She taught me how to bake cookies, how to take care of the little garden in the backyard, and how to think clearly instead of letting emotions take over. But more than anything, she made sure I never felt alone. She was also the first person to see how much I loved science. One day when I was 9, she walked into the kitchen and saw me totally focused. I had just mixed baking soda and vinegar and was smiling as the bubbles fizzed and spilled out of the cup. She folded her arms and laughed. Well, looks like we've got a little scientist here. I looked up, face turning red. I was just playing around, I said. She smiled. Trying things out is the best way to learn, Emma. But if you're serious, let's do it properly. The next day, she took me to a bookstore that had a kids' science section. She told me to pick anything I liked. I chose a book about simple chemical reactions and a small experiment kit. She never said no. When I asked Grandma for more books, she always said yes. She never made me feel like anything was too hard or too far away. By the time I turned 14, I was working on a science project about how bacteria reacted to different environments. I spent hours reading, testing, and writing everything down. When the state science fair came around, I almost didn't go. I was scared. I wasn't good enough. But Grandma Brenda wouldn't let me give up. Emma, she said, looking me straight in the eyes, being successful doesn't mean you never fail. It means you keep going, even when it's hard. Her words gave me strength. I didn't just go to the fair, I won first place. When I stood on stage holding my trophy, I looked for her in the crowd. She was sitting in the back row, her eyes full of pride. In that moment, I knew every hour, every tear, every effort had been worth it. Now, years later, I found myself standing in a quiet hallway at the law office. And there they were, my parents. Part of me wanted to yell, to ask why they left me when I needed them most, why they were here now after all this time. But I didn't say anything. I just tightened my fists and stayed calm. My dad's voice was fake soft. This has been really hard. We know you're hurting, sweetheart, but you don't have to do this alone. You're coming home with us. Home? I repeated the word sharply. My mom nodded and reached out to touch my hand, but I stepped back. You're still under 19, she said. You're still our daughter. Now that Brenda is gone, you need your family. Family? I said with a bitter laugh. The quiet around the staircase felt heavy, but I didn't care. I looked right at them. They were trying to act calm, but I wasn't that confused 9-year-old anymore. I knew why they had come back. It wasn't for me. It was for Grandma's money. I stared at my dad. Are you here for me, or for Grandma's money? Silence. My mom blinked, and for a second, I saw the truth in her eyes. But she quickly covered it up. My dad leaned closer, his voice firm. Of course we're here for you, Emma. We're your family. Do you really believe that? I asked. A real family doesn't leave their kid without a word. A real family doesn't show up only when there's something to take. I took a deep breath. It was the calmest I had felt in years. I'm not going anywhere, I said. My mom's face changed. Her smile faded. Emma, don't be difficult. We're your parents, she said. I looked straight at them. The only real family I had is gone. Saying those words made my throat hurt, but I didn't cry, because in that moment I finally knew. I didn't expect anything from them anymore. They had walked away once. I would never let them walk back into my life just to hurt me again. The air in the law office's conference room felt heavy. But inside me, everything finally felt clear. I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall. Every second felt longer than the last. I sat at the head of the table, my hands tightly folded in my lap. Across from me, a man in a neat gray suit carefully organized a stack of papers. He was Brenda's lawyer. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me felt nothing. Another part felt nervous. But mostly, I just wanted it all to be over, so I could leave. My parents sat across from me too. Their faces looked calm, but I could tell it was fake. I saw that look in their eyes. They weren't here for me. They were waiting to see what Brenda had left behind. The lawyer cleared his throat, turned a page, and looked at me. Emma, I'm Henry Ashton, your grandmother's lawyer. I'll now read her will. I nodded, trying not to show any emotion. He picked up the paper and began. Brenda Mackey Montgomery, being of sound mind and acting by my own choice, declare this as my final will. My chest felt tight as his voice filled the room. He first talked about small gifts Brenda had planned for close friends. Then he slowed down when he got to the big part. All properties, investments, bank accounts, and personal belongings, with a total value of about $80 million, will go completely to my granddaughter, Emma Mackey Montgomery. Silence. The room went still. My parents froze. My mom jumped from her chair, shocked. That can't be right. There must be some mistake. My dad narrowed his eyes. His voice turned cold. This isn't how it's supposed to be. Her children should get the money. But the lawyer, Mr. Ashton, stayed calm. He slid a folder toward them. I'm sorry, he said. Neither of you has any legal right to Brenda's estate. He pointed to a document on top. 11 years ago, you both signed this. You gave up all guardianship rights over Emma. Do you remember? My mom's face went pale. That was just paperwork. We didn't mean it, she said. The lawyer shook his head. This is a legal contract. When you signed it, you gave up all rights to Emma, including any claim to what she might inherit. I looked at them, hoping for some sign that they were sorry, that they finally understood what they had done. But all I saw was panic and anger as their plans started to fall apart. My dad clenched his jaw. She must have been fooled. There's no way she would give everything to a kid like her. Mr. Ashton stayed calm. Brenda was smart and very careful, he said. Before she died, several lawyers and witnesses confirmed this will. No one fooled her. My mom's hands turned into fists. Her voice shook. We're her family. We should get something. No, I said, my voice steady and firm. They stared at me, shocked and angry. But I didn't look away. I held their eyes, speaking clearly and calmly. Family is supposed to be the people who stay with you when it really matters. The ones who love you no matter what. The ones who raise you, help you, and hold you when you're sad. I took a deep breath and held the small key hanging from my necklace. Grandma Brenda's last gift to me. You left me a long time ago, I said quietly. And now I'm leaving you. My mom's eyes were full of anger. Emma, you don't understand, she snapped. If you don't share the money with us, there will be consequences. I let out a cold, dry laugh. Consequences? You think I'm scared of you. You actually taught me something important. I don't need people who only care about what I can give them. My dad slammed his hand on the table. You'll regret this. Before I could speak, Mr. Frank, the lawyer, stepped in. You're free to challenge the will if you want, he said calmly. But I'll tell you now, it's solid. There's nothing you can change or use against Emma. Their faces dropped. They knew it was over. Finally, my mom stood up, her face cold and hard. Mark my words, Emma, she said. You might have the money, but you'll never have a real family. I looked at her. Something moved inside me. But it wasn't fear, and it wasn't sadness. It was freedom. I stood tall, touched the necklace around my neck, and spoke clearly. I did have a real family, I said. You just weren't part of it. Then I turned around and walked away. I didn't look back, because I knew I'd never have to see them again. I thought everything would end after the will was read, but I didn't expect how greedy they would be. A few weeks later, Mr. Henry Ashton, the lawyer, called me. He said my parents had filed a lawsuit to fight the inheritance. They claimed Brenda was forced to change her will, said she wasn't mentally okay near the end, and argued that I was too young to handle so much money. I wasn't surprised. I knew they wouldn't give up that easily. But I also knew Brenda had thought ahead. We had all the documents, even medical records showing she was mentally healthy when she signed the will. Everything was legal and already in my name. There was nothing they could twist or fake. The judge rejected the case almost right away. I thought that would finally be the end of it. But I was wrong. That afternoon, I was working at First Metropolitan Financial Services. The company Grandma Brenda had started from scratch. The receptionist called over the intercom. Miss Emma, 3 people downstairs say they're your parents. They're demanding to speak with you right now. I let out a deep sigh, dropped my pen, and leaned back in my chair. This back and forth had worn me out. I'll come down, I said. When the elevator doors opened, I stood up straighter. I wasn't that little 9-year-old girl anymore, the one who cried when they left. And there they were, standing in the middle of the marble lobby. drawing stares from everyone around. My mom stood there with her arms crossed, clearly annoyed. My dad stood next to her, stiff and tense. As soon as they saw me, they walked straight toward me. "Emma," my mom said, her voice full of fake concern. "We need to talk." I didn't move. I just crossed my arms. "Talk about what exactly?" My dad jumped in, his voice firmer. "We can't leave things like this. You know that." I gave a short, cold laugh. "Like what?" "Like how you both left me 11 years ago and never looked back." My mom's jaw tightened. "Watch your tone, Emma," she snapped. "I know you're upset, but this isn't just about the past. This is about family and what's rightfully ours." I raised an eyebrow. "Ours? What makes you think you deserve anything?" My voice didn't shake. "You didn't come back to fix anything. You came back for the money." My mom blinked but didn't deny it. My dad leaned in a little, lowering his voice in a way that felt like a warning. "If you won't cooperate, we'll try something else." I tilted my head. "Something else? Like what?" He clenched his fists. "We could go public. The media would love a story about a teenager stealing her parents' inheritance." I laughed sharply. "Is that a threat? Go ahead. Tell your version of the story." Then I stepped closer, my voice low but sharp. "Tell them how you left your daughter at 9 years old without even saying goodbye." They both flinched. "I wasn't done. Tell them how you tried to cheat your own mother out of everything she worked so hard for." My mom glared, but I kept going. "Tell them how in 11 whole years, not once did you check to see if I was okay, or even alive. And then, after Grandma Brenda died, you showed up again, just for her money." They didn't say a word, but I saw the fear on their faces. Not fear of me, but fear that the truth might finally come out. Because once it did, they couldn't hide from it. My dad looked away first, jaw tight, mumbling something I couldn't hear. My mom paused, maybe thinking I'd changed my mind. But I didn't move. I didn't back down. She finally spoke, her voice lower now. "Remember this, Emma. You may have the money, but you'll never have a real family." I didn't flinch. I looked straight at her, steady and calm. "I already had a real family, and it was never you." She pressed her lips together, turned around, and followed my dad out. I stood there, watching them walk out of the building for the last time. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel sorry. Not even a little. For 11 years, I had wished for a real family. But now I understood something important. I hadn't lost a family. I had Brenda. And that was always enough. I found myself sitting in Brenda's office. A room I hadn't gone into since she passed away. Sunlight came through the windows, covering the desk in a warm golden light. Everything looked just like it had before. The neatly stacked books, the small porcelain teacups on the shelf, and her photo on the wall. Her kind but strong eyes seemed to still be watching me. In front of me sat a small wooden box with a sealed envelope on top. My hands shook as I opened it. To my dearest granddaughter, Emma. Reading her words felt like she was right there in the room with me. If you're reading this, then I'm no longer with you. That hurts me, because I never wanted you to feel alone. But remember, even though I'm not in this world anymore, I'll always be watching over you every step of the way. Her handwriting was a little shaky, but still beautiful. I ran my fingers over the words like I could feel her through the ink. You've always wondered why your parents left you. And I know that question has caused you a lot of pain. The truth is, they didn't just leave. They tried to take everything I had. When they saw they couldn't fool me, they chose to walk away. But I never once regretted keeping you. You were the best gift they ever left behind. I held the letter close, my chest feeling tight. Emma, I'm not only leaving you money. I'm leaving you something more important, a purpose. I spent years building the Hope Foundation, a charity to help children who've been abandoned, just like you once were. I used what I had to give others a chance, a voice, a safe place. I blinked as tears filled my eyes. I know you are strong. You're smart, kind, and full of heart. Don't let the past stop you. Use what I've left you to help others, however you choose to do it. At the bottom of the letter was one final line. I have always believed in you. And I will love you forever. Quiet tears ran down my cheeks as I held the letter close. In the weeks that followed, I started learning everything I could about the Hope Foundation. The office was in a small building Brenda had bought years ago. That's where I met her team. People who truly cared about helping kids who had no one. One of them, Nicole, a kind woman with gray in her hair, came up to me and gently held my hand. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "Brenda always told us that one day you'd come." She smiled, and it was warm and real. "She always believed you were the only one who could continue her dream," Nicole said. I looked around the room. The walls were filled with pictures of smiling children, files showing how their lives had changed, and letters written by people who once felt lost but now had hope. I let out a slow breath. "I don't know if I'm ready for this." Nicole gently shook her head. "You're here. That already means something." And in that moment, I knew I was going to make it work. While I helped with the Hope Foundation, I also stepped into Montgomery Investments, the company Brenda had spent years building. At first, the board didn't take me seriously. To them, I was just a young woman with no experience in business or finance. But I didn't let that stop me. I worked hard. I studied every night. I showed up to every meeting. I paid close attention to the best people in a room. And I remembered Brenda's words. Knowledge is power. I used that knowledge to earn their respect. 1 year later, I stood in front of the board, sharing a plan to grow the company in a way that also helped people. And something changed. I could see it in their faces. They finally saw me not as a kid who got lucky, but as a leader. Sure, I could have bought anything I wanted, but I kept Brenda's old Toyota. It stayed in the garage, a little dusty, but I could never sell it. It wasn't just a car. It was a reminder of everything she believed in. Keep life simple. Work with purpose. Help others when you can. I wasn't just holding on to her money. I was carrying her values. I'm not just her heir. I'm her legacy. Life doesn't always go the way we hope, but the way we face hard times shows who we really are. Emma was left behind. She was hurt, but she didn't let that break her. Instead of falling apart, she used her pain to build something meaningful. The strongest legacy isn't about how much we have. It's about what we give to others. By continuing Brenda's work, Emma didn't just find her strength. She proved that we are not shaped by what we lose. We're shaped by what we choose to create. What do you think of Emma's journey? Did she do the right thing by standing up to her parents? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more true stories about family, strength, and finding your place in the world.